Hello, Pop Tarts. Welcome to this episode of Deep Chats, where I am absolutely riveted to introduce the tarot lady, Theresa Reed. Thank you so much for being here to talk to me.
Well, Kellyanne, thank you so much for having me. I'm such a fan of yours, and I am just excited to connect.
Thank you so much. I'm actually giddy. And I want to start by saying you are such a real OG of the online tarot world. You're the first person that I saw online that inspired me to do my thing. And so I've been watching you for 10 years. But I was wondering, I know you've been doing your thing for a long time. So if you could maybe start by just telling everybody how you got started, how it all began, and how long you've been reading tarot.
Well, I have been at this a long time. I have to remind people I'm almost 60 years old, and I started reading tarot when I was a teenager. So we're talking over 40 years ago when I got my first tarot deck. And it was so, I mean, I've told the story a lot, and so I'll do a real condensed version. I was a very typical angsty teen, young punk rocker into all the really super political stuff and also trying to figure out why I did not fit in with my family or the rural area where I grew up. I was trying to find myself. And I had the good fortune of having a friend who was also a fellow misfit, and her mother was an astrologer. And her mother one day did my astrology chart. And I'm like, wow, this makes a lot of sense. I'm going to get into astrology. And so I started getting into astrology. And I also had to back up and say, I also grew up in a very psychic household. So none of that psychic stuff was seen as weird. That was all normal to us. But none of this other stuff was anything that they were open to because again, it's a rural area. My folks were farm folks. But so I had this friend and her mother did that and I started getting into astrology. And one of the times when we went to the mall, which we didn't go very often because it was an ordeal, it was a long drive, blah, blah, blah. But I was at the bookstore called it was Walden Books. They don't exist anymore. And that tells you how long ago this was. And I remember marching into the store, going into the little metaphysical section, looking for astrology books, and I spotted a tarot deck. And it was the Marseilles deck. And I had seen them in the movies. Like most young people, we've seen it on some of those old movies and stuff. So I'm like, I'm taking this home. Boom. And I took it home. And I just remember opening that deck and I was fascinated the images, the kings, the queens. What is this hierophant? What the hell is that? And just being completely blown away with this deck. And I got obsessed with tarot and astrology both. And I want to also add studying because you never stop learning. I've been studying tarot and astrology now for over 40 years, but it all started with just being introduced through the luck of a friend's mother. And also back in the day, it was very hard to find the information, especially if you were in a rural area. There was no internet like we have today. There were none of these thousands of different decks to choose from. You got what you got. So it was really all serendipity.
That's amazing. I was introduced to tarot through one of my mum's friends. She was just going to throw her Marseille deck away, and I wondered if I might want to play with it. And I often think about the good fortune of that and how it's changed the course of my life. And also on the internet topic, I was thinking recently how happy I am that I remember having no internet, not having the word internet, and then experiencing dial-up. Like I'm really happy that I come from a time where I remember that change because now
Mhm.
it's like, I mean, it's just another world now, isn't it? Everything's at your fingertips.
It's overwhelming. And I got to say, one of the things that I really, really appreciate about not having it back then, if you wanted to learn tarot or astrology, you really had to want to learn it.
Oh
You
yeah.
had to hunt and peck. You had to dedicate yourself. And there are people now who will pick up a deck or they'll pick up an astrology book and they assume they're ready to go professional. Like boom, boom, boom. Oh, I found this information online. So after studying for 6 months, now I'm a pro. And it's like, oh my God. No, you're not. You're a perpetual student. But B, where's the hunger? Where's the fire? Where is the going through the trenches and learning and really, really having to work for it? I really appreciate that I had to work to find the information. It made it more precious for me.
I totally agree with you. I couldn't agree more. I do see people rushing to go pro way quicker than I ever would have dreamed of. And, like back in the day before we had access to just being able to, oh, I'll just go get it on Book Depository, I'll just get it on Wordery, whatever. You had to be like, you had to be ballsy. You had to go into the library.
Yes.
I want to order a book of correspondence. Speak up. You know,
Yes.
you had to, and you would like have a friend whose auntie had some books, and you'd be pouring through them and stuff because you couldn't take them home, and you'd be like, oh my god, I've got to speed read this. And you used the right word, hunger. It was a hunger.
Mhm. Yeah, and even with music, I've always been into music. I was a music fanatic. I've been there's always music playing in this house, and I got into underground music in a rural area when I was 12 years old. And so I would have to save my money and, do chores, or I got a job, of course, when I was in high school, and save. And then to get the records I wanted back when they were called records, it meant that I had to read magazines. I had to discover who might be cool. And then I had to special order it because they weren't in regular record stores, the stuff I wanted. And I remember there was this one guy, and I would make him order me stuff like the Sex Pistols and all that. And this is the 70s. And this guy's like, "Kid, are you sure you want this?" And I'm like, "Yes, order it for me." And, that is how it had to be. And then I'd have to wait for it to come in. And now you don't have to do that. You could just boom, download something, watch a video on YouTube. It really is a different world.
Yeah, it is. Delayed gratification is good for the soul.
It is. I mean, don't get me wrong. I do love the internet. I love nothing better than not having to go to the shopping mall, and I can go online and order some shoes and I don't have to see a human being. I do love that convenience. But when you're trying to learn something and really make it your craft and your art, there's something about really having to deep dive and work for that information that makes it so juicy.
Absolutely, yeah. So did you work? Did you sort of read tarot for others professionally before you went online? Did you do face-to-face stuff first?
Yeah, well, what ended up happening is when I first started learning as a teenager, it was basically I would read for anybody who would let me. Anybody. I would just read for anybody. And by the time I was about 18, I started getting some serious chops where I would actually have some adults, I would read for like family members and that, and they'd be like, "Wow, this is really good." And I still never envisioned it turning into a career. That I couldn't picture it. I mean, not many people back in the day would grow up and say, "I want to be a tarot reader." We had like traditional jobs, like maybe you're going to be a teacher or you're going to be a psychotherapist or whatnot. But I never thought I'd be a tarot reader. And after 10 years of reading tarot and studying it, I remember I was working as a bartender for a while. And I always like to laugh because I was a terrible bartender. But the days I was put on were like really slow days. So I started bringing in my tarot cards. And suddenly my days became very popular. And I would have a crowd of people and I'd be slinging drinks and reading cards and people started saying, "I would really, really love it if I could get a reading with you outside of here. I'll pay you, blah, blah, blah." And so, that kind of is what started me moving towards doing professional readings. So I started my business after the guy who owned the bar said I would fail. Don't ever tell me that. And I've been going strong ever since. And so I had a little business card. I would do home parties. I would read at other events and bars. I started doing a lot of one on one work. I would meet people at their location. Then I started letting people come into my home. Then I ended up moving over to the phone. And then I came online.
Hmm.
So I was actually probably reading professionally for about 20 years before I got online and really started getting online. Maybe less than that, but I mean, the timing is hard to remember. All I know is I had a lot of practice, at least 20 years under my belt as a professional reader before I was online.
Yeah, yeah. You seriously cut your teeth.
Yeah. And let me tell you, reading in a bar, if you want to get good, if you want to get good at tarot, you need a baptism by fire. And there is nothing more intense than being in a bar full of bikers who, sometimes are very skeptical and they're hard asses. And you're breaking out that tarot deck and you're boom, 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 going down the line. And that is going to make you sharp. It's going to make you fast. It's going to make you confident. It's hard, but that's the way you really become a pro.
Absolutely, yeah. And for people who have been doing it for a while and they've been doing pre-recorded video and email online, and they're very nervous about switching to live, because I remember those nerves when I
Mhm.
switched to doing it live. It's different when you have time to construct the sentence, or when you can edit out a mistake in a video. It's different to do it live. But I always say to them, if I know they're in readiness, I'm like, honestly, you will accelerate your learning through doing it live. You have no time to prevaricate. You have to get,
Yes. It's
yeah.
much better to do it live. If you wanna learn how to be a good reader, listen, you can learn to be a good reader doing email and video reads, that's fine. But if you wanna be an excellent reader, if you wanna be a psychic reader, then you've got to meet people. You've got to meet them, and you don't have to meet them even face to face. Over the phone or Zoom or whatever is fine, but you've got to do those live readings. And when I do readings, and I don't read for the public anymore, but when I would read for people, I would have no information, and I would sit down, I would not ask one question, I'd throw down cards, and then I would start telling them what I saw.
Mm.
And that is a skill that cannot be learned through a book or a class. That is a skill that you only learn by sitting your ass in the tarot table on that chair and laying out those cards and working with a variety of people. And that's the other thing. When you work with people and real humans, you're working with people from every different type of background, every different type of situation. And you're also picking up on their energy. And that is also something you cannot learn by not doing in person or real live readings. Because here's the thing, okay? If you've never done a live reading, here's where the problem comes in. You start to develop these interpretations that become very rote. They become, this is what the memorized version of Six of Pentacles is, for example. But let's say you and I were both sitting down at a tarot table and we have the exact same question and the exact same cards in the exact same positions. A good tarot reader is going to deliver a different reading for each person because we're different people. There's different energy, and you cannot pick up on that the same way if you have not sat down with people and learned how to read energy. And I'm not talking looking for cues like, oh, she's twisting her ring finger. It's her wedding ring. It's none of that. It's really just sitting there and it's like, this is what I'm picking up on.
Yeah, feeling into it. Exactly. And I'm so glad all the other ways exist, because, when I started, I do only live readings now. It's how I
Right.
prefer it. And some of my clientele could not continue on with me because they don't want the live. They want the email or the pre-recorded, and that's totally fine. I know many proficient readers who do that excellently. But I can only say that I'm twice the reader I was now that I speak with people in the immediacy of the moment and hear their voice and like really connect with what they need in that moment. Yeah,
That's
definitely.
how you become a more psychic reader. I
Mm.
mean, if you are a psychic reader, you're going to pick up on people's energy, and it makes it a very, very different experience. And let me tell you something, people, you can feel energy through an email. You can. That is very true. I used to do email readings. I was very good at them. But but you still need to start practicing working with live humans because it's going to make you better at your email readings. It's going to make you able to pick up on that subtle energy that you cannot pick up if you just read a book or take a class. You need that hands-on experience. You need to practice with humans because that is going to help you to learn all about energy. Energy is a real thing.
I've got a feeling that you've inspired at least one person watching this to do exactly that. You make a very strong case. Is there any ever experience of setbacks or doubts that you had along your way where you were like, okay, I don't maybe want to do this for a career, or I don't even want to use it for people anymore?
Absolutely. Every artist, and I consider people who are tarot readers, you're an artist. You're an astrologer, you're an artist. Every artist has that. Everybody in any career has those moments where they're like, what am I doing? Maybe you deal with that. And usually for me, what would always influence that feeling was when I would have a really nasty experience with a client. And I'm very, very sensitive to that. I'm super sensitive to rudeness. This is my Libra rising coming through. I don't like rudeness. I don't like mean people. And anytime I would deal with that, I would just be like, why am I doing this? Why am I subjecting myself to this? And then I would always get back to the core of why am I doing this? Is because I want to help people. And this is my tool to help them. And as long as I remain true to that, it kept me going. But I got to tell you, there were times where people Humans can be very messy and very mean. And that would always make me feel like I need to just walk away. I don't want to do this anymore. And in fact, that's actually what influenced a lot of my business decisions too. I used to do the tarot parties, which I mentioned. And that was where back in the day I dealt with so much abuse from people. They'd show up drunk, they'd be rude, they'd be playing games, they'd want a discount. Don't start me on discounts. And I remember that I used to get so depressed towards the end when I stopped doing them. And my husband would be like, "Well, you make good money though." I'm like, "I know, but this isn't worth it. I'm never about the money. It's about the art. It is about the work. It is about my passion." And I feel like I'm dealing with people who are crapping all over that. And so I was really thinking about quitting parties. And then finally, I had the incident that was the straw that broke the camel's back. I went to a party and there was a client that I banned for life. I had banned this client and they knew they were banned. They showed up at the party and they sat down for a reading.
Wow.
And
Well,
I'm like, I mean, I don't know if you watch Barry with Henry Winkler, but there's a scene where where Henry Winkler's dealing with Barry. Barry does some horrible things, and Henry Winkler feels like he's being totally held hostage by Barry, which he was. And so I'm like, oh my God, I'm like Gene Cousineau. That's the energy. But I remember sitting there and I'm like, okay, you're a pro. You're going to suck it up and do this reading, and you're going to go home and you're going to quit doing parties. And I did the reading and I went home. I told my husband, that's it. I'm never doing another party again. And I stopped because I'm not going to put up with that. So there's a lot of times where it's pushed me over the edge where I've eliminated certain things that I used to offer for people, but I will never give up on tarot or astrology because I love them. I love them.
yeah, and you can shape your business the way you want.
Hmm.
Very, very long time, for example, since I've had to give somebody a refund on the basis that they weren't a suitable client for me. And that is because it would be very, very, very hard for someone to mistake what I offer, because I am loud about it. I'm loud about how I use tarot, what I do and do not do, what my beliefs and philosophy are about it. So I always get clients that get me. So the more you shape your business to your philosophy, the more you get the clients that you wanted to call in, and no longer get a client that was banned for life sitting down in front of you like that. How obnoxious.
I mean, who does that? But there is a thing there. I think tarot has a stigma to it, and there are people who don't want to take it seriously. They think, and there are also people who are just very entitled, and they act like that with other businesses. I mean, here in the U.S., we call those Karens. So there are people who they just don't get it. And they don't even understand they're being rude either. And these again, you see these types of people in restaurants too. You see them all the time. And so why aren't we as service providers going to get that too? Of course you're going to get that because you're putting yourself out there. So
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I think boundaries are just so, so sacred. When you read your own tarot, presuming that you do readings for yourself, do you find that more effective than getting readings from others?
so for me, I prefer to read my own tarot cards because I believe nobody knows me better than me. But also sometimes when I get a reading from somebody, they're intimidated and it taints the reading, which I feel really I know, isn't that weird? Um, and there's just it's just like, yeah, I have better luck with astrologers. When I get a reading from an astrologer, I never ever deal with that. An astrologer, it's like they're kind of like Dragnet, just the facts, ma'am. And then I never ever had that experience. I have a number of astrologers I work with that I really, really love. And I like getting a second opinion. Of course I do. Even though for tarot, I feel I know myself best. When it comes to getting a reading, I do love getting a good astrology reading. That I love.
I've got a suspicion that within the astrology world, when an OG astrologer goes to a newer astrologer, the intimidation is there. But because you're in like adjacent industries, but not the same exact industry, it's okay. It's not as bad. But like, yeah, I would be intimidated to read for you too. It makes sense. And some readers have told me that they do feel intimidated to send my
Mhm.
to me, and I'm like, don't worry about it, just honestly say what you're supposed to say. Like, I'm happy for shadow stuff to come up. I'm happy for stuff that doesn't make sense that then goes on to make sense. Like, I can't say I've ever had an objectively bad reading from anyone online that I've selected, but I know it's intimidating if it's someone that inspired you to start.
Hmm.
Oh my God, who the hell just booked a reading with me? Oh my God, it's Theresa Reed. I can't do this. So I think that's probably why astrology works better too. It's like it's adjacent, but it's not like, oh, that person encouraged me to start reading natal charts. I can't possibly do this, you know?
Right, and also, though, I do think that astrologers, because there's so much math involved, they again, it just feels like you're delivering some facts for me, and it just tends to work out a lot better for me. I just had an amazing reading by I have a reader, Sam Reynolds, I've worked with for a couple of years, and just had a reading for my birthday. I get a birthday with Sam every year, and he just delivers the information just so like boom, boom, boom. I'm like, now that's the kind of reading I need. That's what I want. And it's so funny because sometimes too, when I get readings from tarot readers, I don't know why, but they always want to read about my love life. I'm like, I don't care about my love life. I don't, I mean, I've been married to my husband for we've been together 30 years. I have a great relationship. I never ask about my love life. Why do you all want to poke around in my love life and assume that there's something going on? Or why are you playing therapy with me? I'm not interested in that. Here's what I'm interested in. I want to talk about business. I want to talk about money. I want to make sure my kids are okay. I don't care about anything else. Don't go there. But that always tends to happen with tarot readers. I don't know what it is. It's like maybe they're interested in my love life or my psyche. It's very strange.
That is strange. I always think it's disrespectful to go outside the scope of the reading. And whenever something does come up in a reading that is outside the scope, I say, like, I'm noticing something that is outside of the chosen subject matter. I don't know if you want to get into that or not. I never just come out and say, something's going on over here.
Oh,
You know, but
right.
I think it's the one of the traps tarot readers get into is that so many people come to for a tarot reading for reasons to do with love, relationships. When am I going to find the person? Is this the person? So it's like tarot readers assume like that's what you want. Yeah, you definitely want to get into that. It's like, no, I'm happily married for 30 years. That's fine. Thank you.
Yes, like I have no interest in hearing about that. And I have no interest in talking about therapy style stuff. If I want therapy, I'm going to go to a therapist. Why are you doing therapy on me? Why are you trying to talk about some dark stuff? There's nothing dark. I always tell people I'm the most boring person you're ever going to read. I'm super boring. So if I get some deep, dark, big sexual scandal reading, you're reading the wrong person. That is not me. That's a mirror on what's going on with you.
Well,
So the
right.
other thing that gets me really like jacked up is there's this new thing, and I don't, this is I'm an old school reader where people want to give me homework. This is also why I don't get tarot readings anymore. I'm like, why are you giving me homework? I'm like a grown woman. I don't want your homework. That establishes you as superior over me. And you're assuming like I'm some little student and I got to go do homework and report back to you. No, that's not how I work. I'm a grown woman. Don't give me homework. That's very insulting. I've never had an astrologer do that, but I have had tarot readers do that with me. So weird.
What about kind of like because I make a point of giving suggested ways to actually integrate the advice into your life. Presumably that's what you mean by homework, but
No, no, no,
it's
no, 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 no. That's not what we mean. People come to us for advice. And
mm,
sometimes people will say, what do I do about this? I'm like, well, here's the tarot, what it says. Here's some advice. Here's my opinion. This is a very separate thing. And I'm very clear about that. What I mean is someone who says, so I'm going to give you some homework. So what
oh,
I want you to do,
word
oh, yeah,
homework.
I had a woman once. This was the funniest thing. She told me, I'm going to give you homework. You're going, and this is another one who was giving me a reading about my love life, and she was totally wrong. And she says, so here's the homework. You're going to go read this book called He, which is all about how to get along with men. And then you're going to read this book called We, which is about how to have a relationship. And I'm like, I've been with this man forever. We get along fine. And I get along great with men. And I don't have trouble having relationships or getting love or any of that. And she was assuming that I got dumped and I was forlorn and I couldn't get a relationship. And I'm like, you're reading the wrong person. I've never had trouble finding love. Not every relationship has been a good choice. There's been terrible choices, but I've been with this man forever and a day, and now you're giving me homework, and she's telling me, and I want you to read those books, and get back in touch with me. Let me know what you've learned. Some crap like that. I'm like, yeah, you'll never hear from me again.
I don't think that's appropriate, and I really don't. I'm having a bit of a reaction to that physically. Would you suggest to anyone who sits down in front of a reader and feels like the reader is absolutely missing the mark to the extent that you've just described, would you suggest just letting the reader do their thing and then taking what you can from it? Or would you suggest being like, let me stop you there? That's totally not my situation. So can we read this differently?
Here's what I advise. First of all, I advise that every tarot reader has an intake form. So that way you know what people want to ask about. So you're not going to waste their time. It's all about we don't want to waste time. When you give people an opportunity to be upfront about where they want to focus the reading, you are allowing them to take command of the reading, and it's empowering for the client. Now they're sitting down, you know what they want to focus on. You can always then say, listen, I am getting a feeling about this situation here, like you suggested. Do you want to talk about this? And if they say yes or no, now you have your answer. Because when you're doing a tarot reading, it is a two-way street. There is a dialogue. And I think it's important if you are going completely off the mark for the client to say, you know what? No, 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 no. I'm married and I'm happily married, and you might be picking up on my sister. You know, that's not me. Uh, I would prefer if we not talk about that because that's not a problem. Instead, this is where I really want to talk. And you're really hitting this part. So this is helping me. And then I'm going to want you to be quiet so I can deliver more of the information. But if you are going way off, it helps the reader for the client to say, that doesn't make sense to me. And you can do it in a way that's not going to throw the reader off.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you've paid money for a reading, you should be able to direct it intentionally. That does make sense for sure. Because then you're sat there listening, I guess, feeling like you pissed your money up the wall, I guess, you
Well,
know?
also people who do that, they're in there then to get entertained. You're sitting at the table and you want to be entertained, you want to be wowed, you're hoping the reader hits on one thing, that one thing that proves that they're good. You're making them really work, and that's not how it works. It's much better when I get a reading from someone, this is what I say, this is what I want to talk about. I want to, and I'm very clear because I'm not going to have my time and my money wasted, and I'm not going to put the reader on a wild goose chase. I want them to know exactly what I need to know so they can help me. I don't want to be, again, don't give me a reading about my love life. I don't care about that. I want to know how are my kids doing? I want to know about my work, this next book I'm working on. I want stuff that's going to help me so I can show up and be present in my life.
Yeah, absolutely. I allow people to send me notes, and if there are no notes, I will email them ahead of time and say, "Hey, I didn't get any notes from you. Can you let me know what you'd like the reading to be on?" And again, it's like you said, it's about not wasting time, hitting the ground
Mhm.
running, knowing already. I come in and I'm like, "So, I reread your notes this morning, and what I understand is X, Y, Z. Is that still the same as when you booked?" And then also, it's a case of me focusing on making sure I'm using the cards for business if it's about business. I don't want to start going on about irrelevant stuff. Your life is so
Yes.
big, you know? So, yeah, that totally makes sense. Um, when I first started out, when I first came online, I remember going to your website for the first time. The tagline was like, tarot tells a story, but you write the ending. Fucking loved that tagline. And I loved that focus on empowering the querent and telling the querent straight away. You don't even have to search for it. It's like you will not be a passive observer, you will be an active participant.
Mhm.
And you get to choose what happens next. And what I noticed about that focus on the querent's choice and responsibility is that at that time in 2011, I didn't see that around much. There was a massive focus in the industry on, I will tell you what is going to happen. And I'm wondering, do you feel like you were going against the grain back then, and how hard was that?
Well, first of all, I'm a very practical person. Even though I'm very intuitive, I'm very, very exceptionally practical. I'm actually good at paperwork and paying bills and all these really super boring stuff. Like I said, I got a boring life, and I'm extremely, extremely practical, and I'm also very stubborn. I don't like being told that I can't do this and I can't do that. And way back in the day when I first started reading, I've got what's called a bad astrology chart. And I've had reader, and this still happens once in a while. To Sam never did that, thank God. They'll look at my chart and like, oh my God, oh, you're gonna have all these horrible things happen. I've had tarot readings who've done that too, and I'm like, nah, mm-mm. I'm gonna take this information, I'm gonna change, I'm gonna show you. And so my perspective has always been from very young. I don't like being told I can't do something. I don't like being told that I'm not good enough, that I don't measure up, that I can't make my life better. If I would have believed everything I was told when I was young, my life would be completely different. The thing is, I didn't believe it. I always knew there was a way to change things. There's a way to work with energy. And so when I am doing a reading, of course, we're doing prediction because I'm into divination, but I'm also looking at, okay, here's the way things are going. Now, if you like the way things are going, right on, keep on. If you don't like this, we need to look at alternate routes to get you to the path on where you want to go. Because I am a firm believer that no matter how bad your astrology chart is, which I don't think there's such a thing as a bad chart, I don't care if you get every terrible card in the deck. I'm going to help get you to that finish line. My job as a reader is to help you live your best life, not just say, well, it looks like your chart says you're going to be an alcoholic. Guess you're screwed. Bye. Good luck. That's not how it works. And readers who do that are doing a disservice. You're making people feel they have no say in their lives. Now, there are situations that are very complicated. And there are things like, oppression, systemic racism that complicate things for people. There are times where people have mental health issues and they need help. Absolutely. There's situations that are complicated, but there's also a lot of situations you can look at in a reading, and then we can look at where there's wiggle room, where there's room to move around. And so that's why I think, okay, let's look at what's going on here, but let's find a solution. If you live your life with that kind of a perspective, you're going to walk away from the reading and feel like, okay, things are challenging right now, but I've got some things I can think about here. If you've got a quote unquote bad astrology chart, you can learn where your strengths are and where your weaknesses are and how to work with that energy. One of my favorite stories too. So I had somebody, this is a couple of years ago, they looked at my astrology chart like, oh my God, Saturn's going to be going through your second house. Looks like you're going to be broke. So that's not how this, no, that's not how this works. Not in my world. I said, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to set a goal. Saturn loves goals. So I set a goal. The goal was I'm going to pay off my house early. And so Saturn likes structure. So I created a budget and a really strict budget, a really strict structure. And then I went to work because Saturn also loves work. This is what I know about Saturn. And did I live lean during that time? Yes. Did I clip every coupon? Yes. I paid off my house like over a decade early, like 14 years early.
Right.
That's how you work with bad aspects. You figure out what is this bad aspect like? How do I work with that? How do I make this work? It's the same again, like my other story that I like using is when my daughter was born, she came 3 weeks early. Yes, I planned my children by astrology. And so she screwed up my whole little master plan. And I looked at her chart right after she was born, and I'm like, oh my God, oh, this kid is going to be so hard to raise. And she was challenging as a teenager. My daughter and I are so close because I knew that, okay, here's her chart. This is where she's going to be difficult. This is what you need to know to honor her needs and to show up as the best parent for this child where you have very different charts. That's how this works. And I don't know why people don't think of it. And when you give someone this doom or gloom, or even like, oh, it's all going to be perfect, don't worry about it, you're telling them you have no choice and you're passive. I don't want to be sitting around waiting for Mr. Right to show up. If I know there's energy around that, I'm going to go and get it.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel the same. I was just talking to a reader before today, and she was saying, sometimes when I get the card so bang on, I worry that there's no such thing as free will. And I was like, see, that's the thing. We can get it so bang on, but it gives you instructions on how to change the web of weird. It doesn't say that's how it remains. It's a snapshot. And if you don't like what it says, you can be like, okay, so that's where I need to start plaiting this and taking this out of the tapestry and unpicking these stitches. Like, it's just information. So when a lot of stuff comes up that's like, there's stuff on the horizon that's ungroovy, you're not focusing here, you're making mistakes here, I'm like, okay, good, this is all information, this is instruction to help me figure out how to defy that. And I will
Yes.
always believe I have that choice. I'd hate to read tarot and not believe I had that choice.
Ditto. And also sometimes when you get a reading where it looks really hard, at least now I'm prepared. I'm not going to be walking around like with gumdrops and, fairy wings and all kinds of foolish ideas. I'm going to be like, okay, hard transits are coming up. I pulled the tower. Let's do this. Now at least I know while everything may be falling apart, I'm like, okay, I saw this coming. I got this. I got this. I got this.
Yeah, totally, totally right. Because you've been around in the industry for a lot longer than me, and because you're someone I respected, one of the first people I ever was like, oh my God, I can do this. This is going to be great. I know that you've seen a lot of changes because I've seen a lot
Hmm.
of changes since 2011. I've watched everything. What does JC say? People come and go. I've been here from the start. I watch them put it together and I'll watch them take it apart. That's how I feel now.
Yes, absolutely.
That's how I feel. So I was kind of wondering, what are some of the best and worst changes that you have observed over time?
The best changes is the rise of Black and LGBTQ plus readers. When I see more BIPOC and LGBTQ plus readers out there and really owning the stage, that makes me so happy. They have so much to contribute and it is their time to shine. That makes me happy. And back in the day, anytime you'd even see things in the movies, it was always like some white lady wearing a scarf, and that would be it. And it's like, but that's not the way it is. So now, and this again, thanks to the internet, there is more of a spotlight on Black readers, and LGBTQ plus readers. And I think that is so, so, so important. And also the tarot decks are now having better representation. What do we have back in the day? The Rider-Waite-Smith deck, which by the way, I still love it, but it's a bunch of white people on it. And now finally the creators of decks are listening. The publishers are listening. There are more books like Cassandra Snow put out Queer in the Tarot. Thank you, Cassandra Snow. This book needed to happen. There are decks coming out that have people of color in the deck. This is so, so important. So that's the best thing that's happened is the representation makes me happy because I know when I sat down at the tarot table, I wasn't reading for just white people or straight people. I was reading for everybody under the rainbow. Why wasn't that represented in decks? And why weren't we seeing more of those readers? Because also face it, not everybody wants to go to me because they want someone maybe who understands their lived experience, and I might not. I mean, I like to think I could, but they might not feel comfortable. So that's been the best thing. What is the worst thing? The worst thing are people jumping in to this as a career before they're ready and they're doing great, great damage. And then guess who gets to go and fix it? And unfortunately, some of these people, they take a 6-week course, they get a little certification stamp, boom, and they assume they're fit to read the public. No, you have got to have a couple of years under your belt, like we talked about earlier, really learning about people's issues, different issues. You've got to read for a big swath of the public before you start understanding how those cards can mean different things to different people. So the hardest thing for me is watching some of these readers come in and do some real damage. And undoing that is not something I enjoy doing, by the way, at all. So that I don't like. I think it's really, and that's not me dissing anybody and saying, hey, you can't go pro. It's like, give yourself some time. Give yourself, gather those chops so you don't do damage unintentionally.
Yeah, and when you said about undoing damage, you remind me very much of some of my tattoo artist friends who are like, "I'm doing a cover up later," and honestly, I don't know what this butcher thought he was doing with this girl's back. I don't. It's just not even straight. Like, and they're really really clever at artfully doing something else, and I really respect it. But it makes them angry because it brings down the value and the respect of the entire industry. I'm presuming that one of the key ways that you witness this damage being done is when querents tell you what's happened with another reader and what
Yes.
they've said. You're like, excuse me.
Oh yes. I mean, I've got stories you would not believe. This was even before the internet too. There would be sometimes people who got really gung ho and they thought like, I'm a reader. I've had some good experiences. It's like, have you had a bad experience yet? You need to get a couple of those under your belt first. Then you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Have you ever sat with someone who threatened to like beat you up for reading tarot? You need to go through that. Then you understand what I'm talking about. Have you ever had someone sit at your table and break down and you had to talk them off the ledge? Nope. Then you understand what I'm talking about. You've got to go through these things so you know how to deal with all these situations. And they will come up. They will come up. And you don't learn that just by taking a 6-week class. And by the way, those 6-week classes, although I mean, I teach some of those myself. I respect that, but I'm always very clear. This is not you going pro yet. This is not
Right.
you going pro. You have got to get some time in the tarot trenches. You've got to get some hands-on experience because those situations will come up. And sometimes when people take a class, I think they assume it's going to be fun and glamorous, and it can be, and or it's easy money. And it's like, oh no. And you got a teacher has to remind students you can do damage with this work. And you have to be mindful, you have to be thoughtful, you have to be caring, and you've got to make sure that you are not intentionally or unintentionally, again, causing harm. And that happens when you don't have experience.
Absolutely. It is a responsibility. And I do business mentoring. And one thing I love about my business mentoring clients is I meet clients that have been reading tarot for as long as I have, and they have just like been on the sidelines about going pro, and they want to know like what has it been like for me? What kind of money do I make? What problems have I had? How to work the algorithms? And I give them that advice. But I also speak with a lot of people who have only just started with tarot, and not one of them has ever said, I want you to teach me how to quickly be able to do this. They've always
Mhm.
said, I know I'm not ready, but I want to know if this is something I want to reach for in the future or not. And I won't know that unless I pick a pro reader's brain. And I respect that, because if someone was to come to me and be like, I picked up a deck 3 months ago and I'm ready to read, I'd be like, I can't mentor you. It's not ethical.
Exactly. And by the way, the people who do have the humility to realize that I need to learn, I need to be mentored. Those are the ones who go on to become really good readers, and they're built to last. They're built to last. You're not built to last if you're only in it for the money because you will earn every penny.
Yeah,
Trust me.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I was just wondering actually on the subject of that, I was thinking to myself, I have heard a few horror stories. I've done some cleaning up my fucking self. People saying things that really disturbed and upset them. Very
Mhm.
insistent readers who were like, "You need to leave him," and like things like that. If you don't do it, it's disaster for you. And they're like, "That's not what I'm feeling. I don't know what to do now." So I've had to deal with some of that. But another thing I noticed that has bothered me, I very much remain in my wheelhouse with tarot. I'm not interested in getting involved in the politics and the drama of the industry. I hang out with lots of readers that I love, and I'm so fortunate. Like, you certainly took me under your wing, supported my work very early on, which I hugely appreciate, and never been anything but lovely to me. So I like just hang out with other readers that are cool. So that's really as far as it goes. But I did get on TikTok because my publisher made me. I was like, I don't know if I like it. I'd like to wait a bit longer to see if it's going to last. And I don't think anything I want to talk about can be said in a minute. But I got it anyway. I did a few arty videos for my book. And I was like, you know what? Out of curiosity, I'm going to see what's happening with tarot on TikTok. And I saw some good things, but I saw some bad teaching. I saw some things that are absolutely fucking categorically wrong. And what I noticed about TikTok is that in order to get your video to go slightly viral, best thing to do is have a very snappy hot take with zero nuance that you deliver in rather an aggressive manner. So people would be like, if you're doing this with tarot, if you think this card means this, you're wrong. And I'd be like, no, that's not wrong at all. And I never ever replied to anyone and was like, this is bad teaching and
Mhm.
it's not accurate. It's all kinds of weird theories about what reversals mean or what you should and shouldn't do with shuffling. And it's all very, well, not all that. Like I said, there was good material on TikTok. I'm not going to deny it. But when I saw teaching that I thought was damaging or would put people off, I didn't say anything because, like, you know what? People get the teacher they're ready for. Have you ever said anything when something's come up and you've been like, all right, that's enough? Like, you can't say that.
Well, first of all, I'm kind of a lone wolf. I'm very friendly with people in the industry. I run with the pack from time to time. There are some tarot readers I absolutely look up to, like Rachel Pollack, Mary Greer, and Ruth Ann Wald Amberstone. They've all been mentors to me. I love them dearly. And there's, plenty of people I'm very friendly with, but I stick to myself. I am really big about minding my own business and staying out of the tarot politics. I'm not interested in that. Every once in a while, I get pulled in, and I'm like, this is not my thing. I am not interested. I am too old for this. So I tend to mind my own business. And here's the Libra rising again, too. If somebody posts something that I find really objectionable or wrong, I don't need to get involved in this. This is not my problem. This is not my problem is one of my favorite statements. And maybe I might write something on my blog that that shares my feelings about the topic, but I never attack anybody. I'm not going to show up on someone's, reel and leave a comment saying you're wrong. I don't bother people. I'm not into that. That's not who I am. And I feel like even if I think this is wrong, who knows, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. So I'm just going to shut up and mind my own damn business. And sometimes people wonder, well, how are you so productive? You get so many books written. Because I mind my own business. I'm not doom scrolling and going over the internet. I spend very little time on the internet, by the way. People think I'm on there a lot. I check in mostly with Twitter. I'll like do something, do my hit and run and get the hell out. But I'm not like looking through and like picking through and oh, I gotta comment. I gotta say something. It's like, oh, well, that's something I don't like. I'm just going to mind my own business.
Yeah,
And wouldn't it be beautiful if people minded their own damn business?
it really would be. It really would be. When I sort of, well, I spent a few years wondering if there was something wrong with me being a lone wolf. Because I too am like, I know who I like and I know who likes me, and it's fun and it's nice and it's easy. And I think that's partly because I then just retire to myself and don't involve myself that much. And I used to think there was something wrong with it, but now I realize it's like the
Mm-mm.
easiest, nicest way to enjoy an industry that I chose consciously to come into because it's all I want to do. So why would I mess that up for myself by, starting to really, yeah, go where it's like hot and heavy and horrible. I think if I
Yeah.
saw something if I saw something I thought was like, racist, sexist, homophobic, whatever, that's where I mean, there's been some issues regarding certain decks. I won't get into it, but just things that are completely inappropriate. And I've totally spoken up on that and been like, this is not okay. This should be pulled from Kickstarter. This is like
Mm-hmm.
really racist. It's insensitive or whatever. That's where I draw the line. But with very aggressive, I'm right, this is what you should do, teachings that are wrong. Let's say it disheartened me, but yeah,
Mm-hmm.
getting involved. So I think we're on the same page there.
Yeah, I mean, and I love being a lone wolf. I'm very introverted. I love being alone. I enjoy that. I'm not one for the crowds. I'm not a follower. I don't belong to any terror organizations. I'm not a joiner. I just prefer to stay out of the drama. It's not appealing to me at all. And if I feel like I need to get my head out of my desk to say something, I'll do it on my blog, but I don't like to attack people. I'm not into publicly humiliating anybody either. That's something that's a big no-no for me. If I don't agree with you, if I don't like what you're doing, generally, I will not name names. I will not bother you. I'm just going to go away and I'm not going to hang out with you. I'm not going to fuck with you. It's like, nope, I'm not hanging out with you. Mm-mm. We are just done. I'm not going to support your work. I'm not going to get behind you. You can make your statements in other ways. And on the rare occasions when I do speak out, like I'm very anti certification. Now, you want to get me riled up, that I will speak out on big time. But a lot of times it's like, yeah, are my words needed here? Does anyone need to hear what I got to say? 99% of the time, no.
Mm,
And also, I've also had, every once in a while, I've had issues in the community with certain people being mean. And once again, let's go back to the mean stuff. And I've had some experiences with some of my peers that has been very, very hurtful and harmful. And that's also caused me to just kind of pull away and say, you know what? There's some mean people here, and that's not who I am. I'm not into this attacking people, and I certainly don't appreciate. I've had some experiences with some so-called friends who have turned out to not be friends, and it's like, yeah, I don't need to be doing this. I can go and hang out with my kids, and at least I know there's not going to be any of this drama.
yeah, absolutely. I'm okay. I know that I initially wasn't planning on asking you this because I didn't know it was going to come up, but I just have to know. Can you tell us just a little bit about why you are so anti-certification?
Oh, this is a hot button. Oh, there's so many reasons why I'm against certification. The number one reason is because it creates bureaucracy in tarot, and this becomes very dangerous. And let me just tell you a very, very short story. So I'm also a yoga teacher, although my studio got closed because of COVID. Boo! But back in the day when I was doing yoga, I went through a certification program, and they talked about how you have to belong to this yoga alliance, and it really is nothing more than a big crock that is giving a lot of money to people who are turning it into this consumer thing, blah, blah, blah. But anyhow, what had happened, which was really weird, one of the yoga studios decided they wanted to have a monopoly on the yoga teacher training programs. So what they did here is they joined the Wisconsin Educational Approval Board, I think it's something like that, to make yoga schools have to go through that. And so in order to have a yoga school here, you cannot have a mentoring, you cannot have a mom and pop thing. You have to go through a yoga teacher training program, which is prohibitively expensive for some people. And then you have to join the Yoga Alliance and pay them money. They don't do anything for you. It is a racket. And also, it gives them the ability to take away your certification if you're not up to their standards. And this is, in a nutshell, where we get problematic. First of all, when it comes to tarot, there's so many different styles of reading tarot. How are you going to judge which style is right, which deserves to be certified? Who certifies the certifiers? Who's keeping them in check? How do you know if they are ethical? What if they're not? And what happens if I get certified and I do something that you don't like because I don't go along with your standard ethics? What are you going to do? Are you going to interfere in my business? Do I want people in my business? Do I want a certification that I now have to get, that I have to spend thousands of dollars for to enrich some person just to give me that stamp of approval? No. I mean, all of this becomes problematic. It puts the power in the hands of the few. It makes it very undemocratic, in my opinion. It also is going to exclude a lot of people who don't have money, who don't have access. That is going to harm people who are, who are poor. It's going to harm Black people. It's going to harm, BIPOC. It is going to be problematic in so many different ways. And also, I just don't want someone in my business, and I don't want an enforced code of ethics. Now, some of these, here's one of the ones that's so problematic to me. So if you join some of these organizations, they're like, so you're not allowed to read for if a third party isn't present. Now you tell me, if I've got a grandma sitting down at my table and she wants to know if her granddaughter who's struggling with addiction is going to be okay, I'm not going to answer that question? Of course I'm going to answer it. Now I just broke your ethical rule. What are you going to do about it?
Mm.
So there's so many problems, but the bureaucracy, the control in the hands of the few, and by the way, the people who have pushed for certification, they're all like usually white people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
Why do
know.
I want that?
Yeah, I noticed that too. Want to have the monopoly. Want to like, used to having the monopoly. Used to being able to say what happens.
And controlling. Why do you want to control it? And again, I'm an intuitive reader. How is that going to compare to someone who uses elemental dignities? How are you going to be able to make sure there's room under the table for all different types of readers? And I remember one person who was going to start a certification. They were like talking on some podcast saying, now we're going to have a way for the consumers to they're going to have like some kind of, I don't know, like I don't remember what the word, recourse or something. And so this is going to be for the consumers. This is why we want certification. Okay, so now what you're going to do is you're going to mean that if somebody doesn't like my reading, they can go to the certifying board and say, I don't like that reading that Kellyanne Maddox did, and you need to take away their certification. They're unqualified. Now that can happen too. I mean,
Mm.
we already got stupid Yelp. Why do we want that? Why? This is
I agree.
so problematic. Certification for tarot is so problematic. And also, again, when you think about people like, I love Ruth Ann and Wald Amberstone, they have the tarot school. You can get a certification from them, but it's not the same. It's like you're certified in their method. They're not like lording it over you. And they give you this beautiful one on one mentoring. They're not trying to take away other people's ability to teach or to offer one on one mentoring. And all of that could get lost if this becomes certified. It's problematic.
I totally agree with you. I've thought so much about like the exclusion of certain groups of people, just the insult that tarot is and has been for a long time at all for various marginalized groups. The insult, this idea that we would like make it into this homogenous thing, make it so much
Mm-hmm.
of a consumer based thing, and yeah, the power in the hands of the few, interfering with my business, interfering with my code of ethics, which is the only code of ethics I will use. Um,
Exactly.
yeah, it is. And also just this idea that readers would be cookie cutter, that you couldn't, because
Exactly.
sometimes I do want a reader who's like tell me how the fuck it's going to be, what I'm doing wrong, and where I need to get to. And sometimes I want like a Queen of Cups reader, and I have my different readers for these things that I know when I need like something very comforting and self-love oriented, and sometimes I need like a tough love slap in the metaphysical face, like, and I want to choose that for myself, you know. So yeah, I wouldn't want judgment passed on people that don't have a
Mm-mm.
certification
I
usually.
don't want a generic reading. I
Yeah.
don't want a generic reader. You know, when I went through that yoga teacher training program too, they're like, okay, well, we want everyone to wear polo shirts. I'm like, that ain't gonna happen. You're not gonna catch a tarot lady in a polo shirt. No, 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 no. Conformity? No. And conformity,
What to wear.
tarot, yes, and tarot and astrology for that matter, they're arts, they're sacred arts.
Yeah.
We are artists when we, again, when we do it, it's our craft. When we sit down at that table, we are all bringing our different flair. We may all agree on the tower being a disruption, but some of us might see enlightenment. Some of us might see your ego getting blown up, and
Yeah.
we're all going to have our different ways. And the biggest thing that I have a problem with is something becoming too expensive for people and leaving a bunch of people out. That is super problematic. And that is such capitalist crap. And you
Yeah.
notice that any of these programs that are out there, you know, other than I love the Amberstones and I will get behind anything they do, but some of them are super expensive too. Like I've seen some that cost $1,000 to become a certified reader in X amount of weeks, and now you can be like, you know, blah blah blah. And I'm like, not everybody's got $1,000 to lay down.
Absolutely. That's so, so true. So I wanted to ask that because I was like, oh, do you know what? There's going to be people watching that are like, ask her about the certification. And I'm like, no, I have to do that. I'll ask you one final question because I'm so fascinated. I'm just about to start again writing my second book. I had a bit of a break, but I'm coming back to it now. Um, One word I would use to describe you is prolific. Just extremely prolific. The whole time I've ever been aware of you, you're always working on something, delivering something. You are a prolific book writer, and I was wondering, particularly with writing, but also just with anything that you launch, aside from not getting involved with drama, which you said was one way that you are prolific, how do you take things through the process and across the finish line? Because I know people really struggle with that.
I'm really disciplined. First of all, discipline comes very naturally to me. I grew up in a household where everybody loves to work in our family. I always say you will never meet a lazy person in our family. We actually just love to work. I mean, my dad was worked. He was a farmer for many years. He loved to work. He then worked in a foundry. He loved to go to work. That was his thing. That was his jam. When he got retired, what did he do? He got another job. He liked to work. So first of all, it's in my blood to really enjoy working because I grew up in a household where we like to work. I had jobs at an early age. We like to work. But the other thing for me is I am not naturally as organized as people think. And I used to be very, very unorganized when I was younger. I'm actually very messy. And there came a time where I lost a bill and that flipped me out. And I'm like, you got to get organized. So I started then really organizing my life and my schedule and my work. And I read a book by Joan Crawford, of all people. And Joan Crawford said that she schedules everything in her life down to the second. Like, you know, that's a damn good idea. So I started getting really hardcore into scheduling. And what I basically do is I've engineered my entire life to fit my schedule in a way that suits me and to be as productive as possible in the shortest amount of time so I can have time to lay around and read books or do whatever the hell else I want to do. So I do work a lot, but I'm extremely, extremely structured. So for example, when I'm going to write a book, first thing I do is I got to find out when is this book due? When is the manuscript due? And how many words? Now what I do is I reverse engineer. I figure out all the math so I can figure out how many drafts I want to do. Usually generally it's about 6 drafts. And then I figure out how much time I have to do it and how many words a day I need to get the rough draft, the second draft, this draft to my editor, back to me. I just reverse engineer it and I make it as easy on myself as possible so it's not going to stress me out. And so it's like, oh, okay, this book now, 1,000 words a day. That's easy. I can do that in under an hour. And then I just commit to it and I sit my ass down and do it. No excuses. Except when I got my wisdom teeth pulled out a couple weeks ago, I took a few days off. But other than that, it's just a matter of here's the goal. Let's break it down into chunks and let's go and then do it. and make sure there's also time for other things in your day. So I'm not sitting here all day on my rump because I don't like that either. So it's all scheduled. And if you like scheduling stuff, you will get a lot done. And I also have a lot of peace and quiet. And this is the other thing I want to also add for people who are like, oh my God, you're so productive. Remember, I'm almost 60 years old. My kids are grown. I'm not dealing with little children underfoot. I don't have those kinds of distractions. I'm self employed. I'm not going off to a regular job and then coming back and having to do this on the side. So, the other thing people need to hear before you start thinking, well, I've got to schedule in, there are advantages I have that I've set myself and engineered my life for that. And it would be different right now if I had little kids underfoot. When I had little kids underfoot, I wasn't writing no damn books.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
So they need to keep that in mind because sometimes people see all the things I'm doing and they want to become overachievers and maybe I'm a little bit of that, but then they have other things in their life that complicate matters. So please don't look at what I'm doing and think that that's the mark of what you should be doing. This is what I want to do and this is what I have the time to do.
Yeah.
And if you don't cut yourself slack, make it work for you, but break it down into little chunks and then just commit in a way that makes sense for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had people mention things about what I'm doing and what they wish they had the commitment and the passion to do. And I'm like, you have two kids under five, like, or you go to a full-time job. When I was working 40 hours a week in the office and doing this on the side, there's no way I would have agreed with an editor that I was going to do a fucking 70,000 word book. No way. I just didn't
Mm-mm.
have time. So yeah, it's comparing yourself against someone who has a completely different situation to you is not fair on yourself.
Never ever compare yourself to anyone. This is another reason why you want to be a lone wolf and mind your own business. If you're online looking at, oh my God, that person's putting out book number 6, or oh my God, that person's got 50,000 followers. Oh my, you know what? You're going to forget what you're here to do. You're here to create, you're here to help, you're here to be of service. That is what tarot is all about. That's what it's about for me. Don't compare someone else's journey to yours because it will be different. Mark my words, it will be. And oftentimes, too, you're seeing the highlight reel of their lives, not the messy stuff going on behind the scenes. Do not compare ever. Get busy. Get out of that. Get offline.
Yeah, totally. That's awesome. Thank you so much. This was so, so inspiring. I really, really appreciate your time. I've been looking forward to this for weeks. This finally happened. Thank you so much for coming on my channel, Teresa.
Thank you so much for having me, Kelly Ann. This has been a delight. Anytime you want to chat, I am down.
Thank you so much.